Welcome to my melee tank build video, you scrappy bastards. This build has been created and tested on Swamps of Corsus DLC on hard and nightmare difficulty modes. This is your typical tank build that does really good damage from melee, leeches health from melee strikes, staggers enemies all the time, and uses also weapons to great effectiveness from short range. Main goal for this build was to reduce incoming damage as much as possible in order to be able to survive on nightmare difficulty mode. On nightmare enemies really do a ton of damage, so we need to somehow reduce it to be able to sustain DPS output from short range. In some cases you are gonna have to switch to long range weapons depending on the boss fight, simply because some bosses cannot be effectively damaged from short range. That is fine though, as we always have stuff like beam rifle or devastator that are really good against bosses. This is the type of setup you can use with this build to great effectiveness. Note that you need to have one weapon with open mod slot. We need Howler's immunity. It is the best mod for this build because it reduces incoming damage by 25% and it lasts for 36 seconds with fully leveled weapon mod duration increased trait. That is why I went with submachine gun as my pistol type weapon. And for the secondary weapon, for my main rifle, I went with Spore Bloom shotgun. Spore Bloom shotgun has this innate mod that slows down enemies and does really good damage over time. So to recap, you need one weapon with open slot mode to use Howler's immunity. Defiler is fantastic choice if you wanna go for something else rather than Spore Bloom as your main rifle type weapon. Versus bosses that are really difficult to stand in melee range against, beam rifle is the best choice, especially if those bosses are also at long range. Devastator is also not a bad choice against those types of enemies. You can also go for normal shotgun, repulsor, and so on, really up to you. There are a couple of melee weapons that are amazing for this type of build. Most important thing here is that you use weapon that can stagger enemy on its first quick attack. A reason behind this is that we need to stagger enemy with quick attack and then we charge up charge attack afterwards to deal massive damage and activate special abilities from some weapons like Petrified Maul or World Breaker. Weapons that I would personally recommend are Petrified Maul, Butcher's Flail, Guardian Axe, Scar of the Jungle God is fantastic against the bosses, World Breaker is also good, and maybe there are some other good ones, but these would be my best choices so far. Maybe I'm missing some weapons as well, so if I am, please post in comments which one would you add to the build. Best armor set for this type of build is, in my opinion, Scrapper set. It reduces damage taken from enemies that are within 5 meters by 15%, and it also increases damage done to enemies within 5 meters by 35%. These are huge stats and are really fantastic for our increased survivability and damage reduction. Next to that are melee strikes, and shotguns specifically benefit tremendously from this set. This is however not the only set worth mentioning for this type of build. Twisted set is also very good. It grants you life leech for melee strikes and it also stacks with leech ember ring, meaning you can leech significant amount of health with each strike if you went with Twisted Hood plus leech ember. Void armor is also fantastic because it grants you defense and offense. Leto and Carapace armor sets are also good choices for this build. Amulet that I'm wearing is Leto's amulet to decrease weight and stamina cost by 10%. With this setup we get light encumbrance, which helps tremendously with stamina management. Other good choices are Brutal Mark and Butcher's Fetish, if you don't like Leto's Amulet. One ring that is must for this build is a Leech Ember. With melee strikes you leech health from enemies. This is especially efficient when doing charge strikes, that do more damage than usual strikes. Second ring depends on the world you are at. On Corsus, Guardian's Ring is a must, because there's a lot of melee type enemies that you are gonna encounter here. This is especially necessary for Nightmare mode. If you are on a world where there are more range type enemies, then I would suggest Mother's Ring instead to reduce incoming ranged damage by 20%. Most important mods for this type of build are any mods that increase health, stamina, and also that grant us any kind of damage reduction, meaning from ranged, melee or elemental attacks. I will list you the most important ones, and then on top of them you can add whatever you like. Vigor, Endurance, Warrior, Mother's Blessing, Spirit, Quick Hands, Keeper's Blessing, all extremely important. Quick Hands is very essential for this build. Even though we are not really focusing on ranged damage, it is important for shotguns, which we do use a lot, to increase that reload speed, which shotguns usually have a problem with. From next set of traits I would recommend Glutton, and if you can, level it up to maximum, and Executioner. These two are the most important ones. From next set of traits, Triage, Arcane Strike, King Slayer and Rapid Strike are the most important ones. Self-explanatory really why all of them are so important. From last set of traits, the only ones that are truly crucial for this type of build are Guardian's Blessing and Concentration. Concentration is newly added DLC trait that really helps with especially Howler's immunity, but it also increases duration of mods like Swarm, making them even better. Evocation is also a good one to have, but I wouldn't put it as the most important one for this build. Blood Bond does not mean you're gonna have damage absorption of 15% all the time. Blood Bond only works with summons, meaning your summon will absorb 15% damage that would be dealt to you otherwise. To be effective with this build, you gotta have some experience with the game first, especially if you're planning on playing on a Nightmare difficulty. Remember, we are doing most damage when enemies are within 5 meters, thanks to Scrapper's set. This is where shotguns are especially useful with this combination. So basically what I do is I combine shotgun attacks with melee strikes. Mastering dodge is especially important for melee type builds because you need to avoid damage. On hard mode with this build you're not gonna have many issues, especially when it comes to damage received. It's gonna be significantly lowered with all these damage reductions that we have. However, on Nightmare difficulty you're gonna have to be fantastic at dodging to get the most out of this build. Switch weapons if you feel like some are not performing up to your expectations. Versus specific boss enemies, some weapons work better, some worse, so don't be afraid to change. When doing melee attacks, try to always hit enemy first with quick attack. That will stagger them if you are using correct weapon. And then you can load up charge attack that will significantly damage them, activate weapons special property and also leech quite a bit of health back to you. Also don't forget to use all the boosts that you can, like Houndmaster's Jerky, Mudtooth's Tonics to increase health and stamina, and so on. Especially that goes for Mudtooth's Tonics, increased health and stamina are a must. Anyway, that's all for this build, I hope you like it, thank you for watching and see you soon.